A quick introduction. Peter DB2OS, president of AMSAT-DL. AMSAT-DL, everybody in the room will be aware, has been the creator of many, many fine amateur satellites over its 50 years. And I know they're working on lots of new ideas for the future. So without, as they say, further ado, may I ask Peter, please go ahead with your presentation. I'm not sure if you heard, but I know you're talking about 50 years, but we give you 50 minutes to compress the 50 years. Okay.
So I have 10 seconds per slide.
Roger, over to you.
Well, I hope it's not that bad. Yeah, thank you very much, Graham, and it's actually a pleasure for me to be with you, even if it's virtually. So, yeah, as you pointed out, AMSAT-DL had its 50 years anniversary just 3 weeks ago. So we had a big party in a symposium, actually, in Bochum. And, yeah, I will show you not all, but a few of those slides. And yeah, just going a little bit through the history of AMSAT-DL, but I have to say in the beginning, it is also somewhat personal retro perspective for myself. And yeah, there are also many untold and unwritten stories. Some we may never tell about. For others, there's just not enough time. So let's start. I will go through the slides, so I hope it works. Just a question, you see my slide? Very good. So yeah, what you see here actually on the front yes. page is a kind of evaluation of our launches when we started with phase 3A in 1980 and going through the big Ariane 5 rocket, and then even at least the longer Falcon 9 with SAIL, with QO100, and yeah, then we might be going to a smaller one again. So yeah, just a brief history. I think many of you are aware, but our history, or AMSAT's history, more or less started in 1957 with the launch of the first Sputnik 1, and only 4 years later, Oscar Group in United States, they had the first artificial amateur radio satellite launched. And if you look at the launch history of countries, they have not been, well, amateur radio is a worldwide community, not really a country, but I think we can be very proud what the Oscar Group already achieved in the 60s. There were other countries launching their first satellites, you see here in a little list, but yeah, so we are well in a very good companionship. So if we look on satellites with German involvement, the first one was Azur satellite in 1969. Then there have been a few more satellites in cooperation with France, with United States, and yeah, 1980 we were hoping to get phase 3A launched. It failed with Ariane 1, the second launch, but nevertheless in 1983 we already had Oscar 10. Indeed, there were plenty of other Oscars before, and then it goes up here a little bit more. This is actually an interesting picture because, and I show it because it shows here those Helios and here the first Azur satellite from Germany. And it's very funny, this Helios mission was in 1974, 1976 time frame. So at that time I was somewhere between 14 and 16. And I had to do my apprenticeship from school. We call it the Praktikum in German. So I was at a company not far from me, and I have even chosen that myself. And when I was there, I learned that they built equipment for space probes. So that company, Travit GmbH, is a small company, private company, and they built experiments for Helios and for Azur. And only a couple of years later, when I made actually my amateur radio license, I learned that the owner of this company was a radio amateur, because we meet again in a club meeting. So sometimes these things are funny. You always see people twice in your life. So AMSAT-DL was founded in 1973 in Marburg. it was indeed founded by our long time president, Dr. Karl Mainzer, DJ4ZC, Werner Haas, DJ5KQ. He was also very active on the satellites, and also our treasurer, Hans Döhr. Unfortunately, Werner died in 2000, and Hans Döhr only 1 year after. So even Werner was not able to see Oscar 40 coming to life. Yeah, so Karl led AMSAT-DL for 28 years as a first chairman. And I think it's an understatement even to say, but Karl is actually the rightly considered the father of the AMSAT Phase 3 satellites. Indeed, there are well-known people from AMSAT NA and UK involved, like Martin and many others. So those projects were always internationally. So just to mention that. So anyhow, after the launch and commissioning of Oscar 40, Karl's focus was more on Mars, and even there was the first Earth-Venus-Earth connection for radio amateurs to demonstrate that we even have capabilities to do interplanetary spacecraft and support such missions. Yeah, then it was actually the year when we launched Oscar 40 that Werner Haas died. He was also a very good friend of mine. He was like a father for me in some way. So we lost him, and Werner was the second president in AMSAT. And so in March 2001, I took over even Karl retired, and I took over the position from Karl. Actually, I was elected as a president, which I have since March 2001. So actual current board of directors is indeed myself. We have Thilo, DJ5YM. Thilo is actually also the director of the Bochum Radio Observatory, so we also have a very good seat there. And Charlie Eichhorn, DK3ZL, he is our treasurer. So how did it start actually in Germany? And as I say, mainly by Karl. So in the in the 60s to early 70s, amateur radio transponder and balloon were very popular. And basically, you could even have longer distances using transponders on balloons. And in fact, Karl, he built the first 2 meter linear transponder for these balloon experiments, which were very popular here in Germany at that time. So that's actually how Karl started to build transponders, and I think he always had in mind to increase the height of the balloon to something like in a satellite orbit. His main activity then in 1974, we have the famous AMSAT Oscar 7 satellite, and Karl designed the HELAPS transponder for it. So HELAPS is a special high efficiency transponder and power amplifier, which gave the spacecraft, which gave Oscar 7 already 8 watts of output power. I think most of you know the story about Oscar 7. In 2002, after, well, the other way around, after 6 years, the battery opened. The satellite was, it was not open, it was actually shortened. But in 2002, the battery opened, the short gone away, and whenever the spacecraft is in sunlight, the transponder is operating. And Oscar 7 was in fact also one of the first AMSATs I used personally. So we see here Karl and Jan King, for example, and this is the module which AMSAT provided. Then indeed the goals were high, and a lot of activity was done until we saw the launch or prepared to launch Phase 3A in 1980. It was supposed to become Oscar 9, but yeah, the launch failed due to a problem in the turbo pump of the first stage, and the spacecraft was lost. Here on the right side, you can see it was flying together with this famous firewheel experiment from the Max Planck Institute in Germany for some scientific studies. Nevertheless, I think it was a very exciting time also to build up the team, and indeed, after the failure, to prepare for its successor. Then it's, yeah, that's some of my personal part, but you know, you see our famous Martin Sweeting, USAT Oscar 9, and there's also some story behind that. So AMSAT-DL provided the battery charge regulator, helped here, and you see that on the left screen, the BCL for USAT. But Oscar 9, and you see that here in the middle, these were the famous bulletins transmitted in 1200 bit FSK modulation, and they were carrying just ASCII stream of text bulletins, so there was no CRC or something, but very simple but very effective. And you see this is one of, that's already bulletin number 41. I have received them very early, but I couldn't find those printouts anymore. And yeah, in those times there was no internet, no printers, nothing. Well, printers, yes, but no real file storage. Or everything was very simple. Anyhow, so that was, and for me that was in fact also a big thing, because I really liked USAT one, and I watched many orbits, and usually because it was in synchronous orbit, it usually came during the lunchtime. And I remember my mother asked, "Peter, lunchtime?" And I said, "Oh, wait, 10 minutes, I need 10 minutes," because USAT 1 was coming up. So that was really a fun time, I have to say, and also helped me to to become what I am right now. Well, so the 21st, so we have always, if you wonder what is phase 1, 2, 3, we usually distinguish the type of satellite. So phase 1 and 2 were LEO satellites. So phase 1, that was satellite with just a battery. Phase 2 already had solar cells to provide energy and longer lifetime. Then we had the phase 3 satellites, which go up to HEO, high elliptical orbits. And phase 4, which was for a long time not expected, but we got it, is indeed geostationary orbit. Somewhere here in between is indeed also MEO. And indeed phase 5, we don't have it yet, but who knows, is denoted to the Mars and Moon interplanetary missions. Yeah, also in only, well, it's already 40 years ago when we successfully launched Oscar 10, the phase 3B, which was in June 1983. And yeah, it was not an easy launch, because there were some problems during the launch. The last rocket stage made a collision with our satellite. It was very dramatic, but it was rescued by Carl. Carl already designed a very clever operating system. Already in the 80s, we call it IPS. And this operating system is very similar to the Force language, but highly flexible. And you see Carl's ground station here on the right below, famous Atari computers, some of you may recognize. And it was really unbelievable how Carl really within hours could save the life of Oscar 10. Without his immediate action, it was really only a matter of hours before Oscar 10 would be completely dead. So the spacecraft was spinning in the wrong direction. It was even spinning left hand instead of right hand, and a lot of other problems. And the batteries were dying because his sun was shining on top and basically not on the solar cells. So this was our first HEO orbit with the 4,000 kilometer perigee and roughly 36,000 kilometer of for the apogee. The inclination was planned to be higher, and we had our own bipropellant engine for it, but after the collision, the temperature was way below the designed for what was designed for the power system for the engine for the bipropellant, and so we could not run the engine as expected. But nevertheless, it was in a very good orbit, and the satellite operated 3.5 years before the memories started to die due to accumulated radiation. But the satellite, by the way, is still in orbit, and maybe it's still from time to time functioning or not, we don't know. Because what happened is, you see here's a picture from the memory system, and the memory is made of 16 kilobyte of static RAM. Can you imagine how little this RAM is? Nowadays you talk about gigabytes or even terabytes of memory. So that is really very special. And yeah, after a while these memories started to die. They lost their brain. And that was actually when I came in as a command station. You see on the right is a picture from 1984, a little bit later actually, but this is when Oscar 10 was started to die, when the memory died, and I found some pictures here. It's from 1986 actually. So the computer was not able to run any software anymore. IPS could not be loaded. It was practically uncontrollable. And that, because I could not do anything wrong, I could not damage the spacecraft more than it is already damaged. Maybe Carl thought, okay, now it's a good time to let Peter in and let's play him and make practice. So that's when I became a command station, and I was doing some programming. It was a nightly job. It was basically an assembler language. And what you see here on the screen is I wrote a very small, only a few bytes of test program, which created an FF pattern test. So all the cells you see here with something like FC or even B6 or something, all these cells were practically non-usable anymore. You could not program a 0. So the bit flips is 0 and 1, and you could not program a 0 anymore. So those memory cells stay FC. So the remaining bits I could still use for something. So what I started to do was trying to program around, find gaps, find some kinds of code where I was still able to execute at least a few commands. But it was rapidly dying, and after some time, I had to give up too. So here you see some of the command stations we used. So Carl developed all the software for IPS and for the Atari computer, and actually during Corona times, I went into my cellar, I put everything out of storage and thought, let's give it a try. Is it still working? And to a big surprise, at least one computer was more or less working. The other, in fact, I had to replace the memories as well. The memories were also died. They were bad, but I got it working. I got even the old tape recorder here with IPS loaded, and I could even replay the telemetry from my tapes. So I have plenty of tapes here, and you can see even that was working again. Yeah, that we saw before. Yeah. And well, just to show what happened later, we turned to the famous Atari ST computer. So this is my command station somewhere, obviously in the 86 and later on. Also, I would like to mention James Miller, G3RUH. He also developed some software on the Acorn RISC computer, which also allowed to do commanding and other activities. And for the other balloons, Carl already developed a digital ranging system to actually determine orbital elements. James has refined this using the Atari RISC computer, and it's to be mentioned that more or less we could generate, we could do the ranging up to 500 meters, less than 500 meters of residual bias uncertainties. So that was used so that we could actually calculate our own orbital elements for the satellite tracking. Yeah, then 35 years ago, 1988, we had the launch of AMSAT Oscar 13. It was a successful launch with the first Ariane 4 rocket, and we were one of 3 huge passengers. Yeah, it went again into high elliptical orbit. It had a lot of transponders, VHF, UHF, SHF, L and S band. We had our first RODAC, so-called RODAC system, a digital store and forward communication system for email, packet radio, and voice, and for example. And all the Phase 3 spacecraft indeed have their own propellant engine using liquid propellant. After 8 years, Oscar 13 unfortunately re-entered the Earth atmosphere. Otherwise, it would have probably be much longer in operation. Yeah, here just a few slides from our meetings. So you always see there is always a big team, and even the international team behind those activities. Yeah, some pictures from the construction of Oscar 13. Hans-Peter Kuhn, who also passed away in 2019, very sadly. He was the head of the RUDAC project, and he was also during the launch campaign, during the launch in French Guiana. Yeah, a few more pictures from the launch campaign. We had in command club station operating from there, Fox Yankee 0 Echo Kilo, ESA Kourou, and yeah, you see the Ataris and all the team members. It were really, really exciting times, and already long ago. Yeah, I go over this quickly. I think if you want to look more into details, you can later do this on the recording. Yeah, even I found a QSL card from Werner where he acknowledged our, well, actually not ours, the first contact via Oscar 13 after the inauguration of the transponder. Indeed, some pictures from the telemetry. It's a famous 400 bit per second BPSK, which is still used on Oscar 100. It's a very, well, at that time it was very popular, and it was already used as a kind of flying mailbox for sending around announcements and things like that. And indeed, 1988, that was when we lost Oscar 13. No, sorry, that was later. That was 19, sorry, not, we lost Oscar 13 a little bit later, 1996. So we had this kind of birthday announcement already for Phase 3D. So in 1996, Phase 3D began thinking today when its IHU was activated for the first time. And yeah, the rest of the text is a little bit like, well, evaluating the Oscar 13, which was going to die to re-enter atmosphere and go away. So I'm glad I lived long enough to learn of this wonderful event. So that was transmitted by Oscar 13. I wish Phase 3D a long and functional life. Do not grieve for me when I'm gone. I'm only metal, plastic, and sand. My life came from enriching the lives of those who built, commanded, utilized me, and it's been a good life. Thank you, Carl, et al. Well, and here just a little graphic which shows the last moments of Oscar 13 when it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. The temperature center hit somewhere 80 degrees Celsius, and then it just stopped operating until the spacecraft was really re-entered. Then we had Oscar 21, which was a cooperation in 1991 with the AMSAT group in Russia and AMSAT-UK in Belarusia, where Hans-Peter was actually the principal investigator. A lot of you will remember Leonid Labutin, US-3CR. Without this would have never been possible. He coordinated all those efforts. And so Rudak 2 had actually the X-25 stone forward mailbox and also a lot of other modes. Yeah, just a few more pictures, how it was constructed, how it was done. Then in 2000, we had the launch of Oscar 14, of Oscar 40. Sorry, it was the heaviest spacecraft AMSAT ever built. AMSAT-DL with a lot of international organizations, and the integration was done at the AMSAT-NA lab in Orlando. As I say, it was the biggest satellite so far ever built, 650 kilograms of mass and 240 kilograms only for fuel. And we had a lot of high power transponders, 200 watt for various bands from HF to K band, and we even had a laser for optical communication. Yeah, unfortunately, the story is known. It was not 100% success, but still we had the satellite functioning 4 years until we had the main real bad battery failure and short circuit in the system. And we were not able to recover the satellite after that. Yeah, a few more pictures. I go through over it, but you see big teams, a lot of work, a lot of volunteers involved. And as I say, all this is done in our free time. We are not working on this like in a job. So all was only possible during vacation and after the regular job. So that's always to keep in mind, because sometimes people ask me if this is my job. No, I have a normal job like everyone, and this is just a hobby. But everyone look at me, a hobby? This is a hobby? Yeah, it is. So a few more pictures from our launch campaign. As I said, it's also for me personally very emotional to see this after 23 years or even more. So it's really an interesting journey. And by the way, no, I'm not going to retire. It's not my not something like a farewell. Also, it might look like that, but yeah, very exciting times. But times were different. Yeah, we did indeed also a lot of observations. So we moved on later to Bochum. I think I have some words about that as well. We were able to work together with the Bochum Observatory. We refurbished and renovated the 20-meter dish, got it working again, which is a tremendous work. And that is mainly thanks to the efforts of Carl, James, Freddie, and many others who made this possible. And this was actually in 2003 when, for the first time, we were able to receive signals from Mars Express. And this, what you see here, is just a record, handwritten record in the logbook, signed by Freddie, Carl, and James, to more or less celebrate this first light, when you call it, for the Bochum dish. We have received many interplanetary probes after that, and the reason why we did that was indeed that we already planned in the time frame around 2004. We already planned before to do this P5A mission to Mars. It was later on extended by a mission to Moon as well. We had meetings with our federal government. So here in the top right, you see Mr. Peter Hinze. He was at that time the coordinator for the German aerospace policy in the government, and he was directly informing Mrs. Merkel about activities, and he was really interested in what we are doing. And it was even a funny moment, because when he learned what we are doing and what we are, that we are actually radio amateurs, and he was asking me, "Oh, are you still doing this thing with the QSL cards?" And I was wondering, what do you know about QSL cards? And then he said, yeah, before he went to politics, he was studying, and he was even going to make his amateur radio license, but then later on he was not, he had no time to do that anymore. But also one of the interesting things. So we planned to do this mission together with the DLR, and we made a study actually over the design of those satellites, and this study was done. It was actually, we set for each of the missions, we set together 1 week in Bremen at the DLR for the concurrent design study. So all the teams, we as AMSAT, the DLR team, the scientists sat together and really designed on it, started in the big room to design and tweak the various parameters. So let's say if the experimenters needed more electrical power, okay, we need bigger solar cells. Bigger solar cells means bigger spacecraft. Bigger spacecraft means more, you need more propulsion, and so on and so on. But at the end, we had a very clever design. So on the left side, you see the design that should be for the Moon mission, yes. And on the right side was a design for the Mars mission. So as seen from Mars, Earth is mostly more or less in the same direction as the Sun. So that is why you see the antenna pointing is more or less in the same direction as the solar panels, just for your hint. Unfortunately, this mission did not materialize at the end. There was no money, and mainly because DLR could not get interesting experiments in time for the launch and so on. And unfortunately, this mission never really came up. At the same time, and we also planned and worked on AMSAT Phase 3E, and AMSAT Phase 3 should have been a test satellite and demonstrator for the new technologies we wanted to fly on the Mars and Moon mission. So what you see here is actually the actual frame on the right side from Phase 3E. And this is our friend Jean-Michel Desabeaux from Arianespace. Indeed, we were looking how we can get this thing launched on another Ariane 5. Well, then we always look for every possibility we can get, and I think that is the story of SpaceX, which is quite interesting. And when they had their first successful launch of Falcon 1, it was really the first successful launch. It was the fourth launch of the rocket. If that rocket would have failed, SpaceX would not exist today. So that was in September 2008. And I thought to myself, nobody knew Elon Musk at that time. I thought, but I knew his vision. I knew he wanted to go to Mars. And that's what we as AMSAT-DL also wanted to do. So I just thought, I tried to contact him. And okay, you see my email address here. Don't spam me, please. But you don't see the address from Elon Musk, and I can tell you at that time it was easy, because I thought, how can I reach Elon Musk? Okay, I try elon.musk@spacex.com. Don't try it, it will come back now. But at that time it worked. And I congratulated him to the launch and also gave some about our ideas. And to my really biggest surprise, he immediately reacted. And we had more conversations after this one, actually. And only a couple of years later, I recognized who was in the CC field. So it was sometimes like that. Anyhow, only a few weeks later, so the launch was on the 28th of September. One day later, I contacted him, and only a few weeks later, in October 2008, Elon sent already his fellow Jonathan Hofeller to Marburg to talk to us, to what can we do together, what is possible. And yeah, some of you might know, nowadays, Jonathan Hofeller is the CEO of Starlink. Well, Elon always said at that time, well, as a company, he has to ensure the business and success of his company. I think Martin knows this problem. If you run a company, you need to make profit. It's different than like from a rocket which is paid by government or something like that. So the plan did not materialize immediately, but we are still working on that. And we come again to that later on. Yeah. We did Voyager 1 reception from the Radio Observatory in Bochum. You see here James, Achim, DHVA, Hartmut, and Freddy. And when we received Voyager 1, we were the first non-governmental, non-commercial, whatever. We were the first organization to receive Voyager 1, and we sent something like a QSL card to the team, to Pasadena, and in return they sent this beautiful photo of the Voyager flight team. That is really a big honor for us, and it motivated us also to continue with the work in Bochum. These are a few pictures from the first Venus echoes, so over a distance from 100 million kilometer. The signal already needs 5 minutes to come back. We used a 5 kilowatt power amplifier on S-band with a special license from the German regulation, and it was the fastest ever radio contact made. Actually, we did, among all the participants, we did CW. It probably can be seen here a little bit in this. So we made CW contact over Venus. So that is our radio telescope. Those who follow us maybe on Twitter and on elsewhere, you know that we have been following a lot of interplanetary missions, including Hakuto, and just yesterday we started to receive the Psyche spacecraft. In 2012, we already planned P5A. We hope to get a payload on the Heinrich Hertz satellite. It launched a few months ago, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately, there was no room for us on the satellite. We would have only got 2 little spot beams in Ka band. Ka band is around 20 to 29 megahertz, so we would be somewhere 47 gigahertz maybe, but we would only have here a spot beam to northern Germany and southern Germany, and we said, okay, this is not really something which we can sell to, even if it's technically interesting, but it's difficult to sell this to the AMSAT community. So anyhow, when one door closes, another one opens. You know these famous words, and that was indeed Oscar 100, Q100, which also is already launched 5 years, which is now 5 years in orbit. Hard to me to believe it. So we launched in November 2018 from Florida with the Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX, and I have been myself there to watch the launch together with Achim, who is actually there already. He saw the launch of PSYK yesterday. So, but even so, that the development already started in 2012 on that spacecraft. In between, we had the relocation from Marburg to Bochum. So in March 2015, we struggled a lot because the University of Marburg decided to close the lab, and that way we lost the people, we lost the location, and we relocated everything to Bochum. Yeah, so that was during the time when we prepared for Q100, and finally we had the launch here. A few pictures. There are not many pictures. People always ask me, "Do you have a picture from the spacecraft?" This picture is. I'm allowed to show it. It was taken in the cantina from AMSAT in Doha, Qatar. That is the only picture which is available in the more or less flight conditions. So we don't know which antennas are ours. But anyhow, this is just a small block diagram. I show this because people always think, even most of the people using the spacecraft think that transponder is just a copy of a TV transponder. No, it isn't. It's everything which marked here in red is custom designed for AMSAT. So even so, AMSAT-DL did not build the hardware. That was done by Mitsubishi Electronic in Japan. All this here was designed by us. We gave the specification. We worked together with the engineers from Melco to make it as it is. Yeah. And while we did not make the spacecraft hardware, we built all the ground station equipment here in Qatar in their center, which is actually providing the DATV beacon. We also provided the hardware for the QARS club station. Sorry. And indeed, we have here our ground station in Bochum, which is doing all the LILA stuff, the beacons, and so on. Yeah. Okay, that is a footprint. So unfortunately, North America, for example, is not in. Parts of South America is in, but there's a lot of water, but there is the Antarctic station, and we have been able to build up a station there, which is really, really nice. And we are already preparing for the next overwintering team, which will operate from there. So there will be Marcos DK7DA operating it. And we have the Polarstern equipped with station, with amateur radio station for Q100. And why we did it? Because indeed it's very interesting, not only from the scientific perspective, but also for educational purposes. But it's not the first time we have it. In 1985, there was already DP0GVN active over Oscar 10. I found my old logbooks here, just to mention that. And this is even some of the old QSL cards. And you see Antarctica in 1985. Hello, Peter. Many thanks for your calculations for Oscar 10. And they made very good connections and so on and so on. So I think it's all also remarkable. But why do we do this with Antarctica and Polarstern? Mainly in a very similar way to the contacts done from the ARIS team over there with the ISS. We are doing this here with schools, and this is Matthias. I think he's not on the. Oh yeah, he is in the middle somewhere. Matthias Bob, DD1 US, organized this with a school in Freiburg, and they made contacts. And you see, if you look in the faces, they are very happy and very interested in doing these kind of things. And I also like this picture because all the technology developed in this Q100 also help us doing new and interesting things. So I'm seeing I'm running out of time, so I will do it a little bit more quickly. I will go over. Anyhow, even the launch of Oscar, the Q100 is already 5 years in orbit, so if there's something we need to do as a follow-up, and we cleaned our brains. Not only we cleaned our brains, but we also cleaned our labs in Bochum to prepare for something new. P3 is still there. It's covered here in this plastic, but we need also a new beginning. And we thought, okay, what can we do? And we made this photo with a CubeSat. We had good fun, and we thought, why not? And on the other hand, something must happen. And the reaction actually on Twitter was quite interesting, because what happened is that we have been contacted I have been contacted after those pictures from Felix from AMSAT-DL. He actually was the one who told me, Peter, DLR is offering, or they have a competition for a small satellite to launch on a new small satellite launcher. So together with AMSAT-EA and LibreSpace Foundation, I proposed this Hermes mission to DLR. We went through it. So we will have, from a very big satellite, we are going to a very small one. From the biggest to the smallest, maybe. We will have 7 pocket cubes. 2 of them will be from AMSAT-DL, 2 of them from AMSAT-EA, and 3 of them will be from LibreSpace. LibreSpace will also provide the pocket cube deployer. This will be launched in actually next year. We plan to launch by the end of this year, but it will be next year. Here we see just a few pictures. I will not go through them in detail, but there will be no linear transponder. There is not enough electrical power available to do that. But so it is more. Actually, this mission is also a mission to get the team together and do new teams, have some fun, and go beyond with this mission. I will be soon finished. Just a couple of minutes. We are going to launch with RFA Launcher 1. And RFA will actually launch from British soil, from the UK spaceport in Saxford next year. But not only this, we already made another proposal, because there's another competition going on, and the proposal is actually, we call it RC, or QSP constellation of 3 6U CubeSats. So you probably know how big a CubeSat is, so you can do much more with it. You have much more power. The most interesting part is here below, orbit. It's not yet clear what the orbit will be, because it depends on the launcher. And this launcher may have a maneuverable upper stage. So it could be that we even end up in MEO, or that would be nice to HEO. So in our specification, we let it open what the apogee and perigee more or less shall be. And here on the upper side, you see already the first reply. We already made it through the first selection round. And please keep our fingers crossed. By the end of this month, we have the second selection round, and then it will be decided and announced if we will have all 3 CubeSats flying, if we have 2, or even if we have 1, or if we have no, we don't know yet. So, some of my last slides, I think there are only one more. What will happen in the next 25, 50 years? So, we will be coming back, even the smaller satellites. Even we haven't given up with phase 3. Let's see what comes. We are building new teams. We are building new corporations at AMSAT-DL with University of Bochum, with other universities. And we will also focus a little bit on STEM and education with university schools. But even so, we are still thinking beyond that. Even we don't know when it will happen. At some time it will happen. We will see ham radio on the moon and Mars, maybe even beyond. And we are still working on that. And if there is an opportunity for us to go to Mars or to the moon, we will grab it. Yeah, that is one slide which I actually had here. It's not directly related, but this is it could have helped today to provide the connectivity. This is a portable Starlink antenna, and this antenna here on the right, I can't show more details. It is just the polarizer board of a phased array antenna, which I'm working designing on in a professional team. But the funny thing is, I had this antenna mounted on my car to do some experiments, and that was, I think, the launch of Artemis 1 mission, and we were looking from Bochum, and then there was a problem, and even the local mobile phone didn't work, so I used my Starlink antenna here to connect directly to the Bochum by remote control, steer the antenna correctly so that we could receive here the Artemis signal. So anyhow, phased array antennas, that is, I think, something we have as amateurs also to look at, but it would be too much for today. But anyhow, if there's someone interested in working with antenna arrays and who have ideas how to bring that into amateur radio, we should think about it. Okay, with that I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much, and have a good lunch. Enjoy your lunch break.
Wow. Peter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's been really just amazing, everything that you've done, that AMSAT-DL has done over the last 50 years. I think everybody in the room is full of admiration and looking forward to some of the future ideas.
And yeah, I would like to add, indeed, if we go successfully with this with the next project, indeed, we always look for cooperation with you, with others. So if you have ideas, if you want to work with us,
we'll be there.
We are happy to have you.
Good, good, and we'll be happy to support the launch up in Saxevord.
Yeah.
But please don't do it in the winter, because the weather up there is terrible. But anyway, never mind. We're very grateful. Any questions before we go for lunch? In the room? I don't think there are any online. I did just do a quick check. Okay, Peter, thank you very much indeed again. Hopefully next year you'll be able to join us in person. To tempt you, we've got the usual gala dinner this evening that you won't be at. We've got the usual auction that you won't be able to enjoy. And there is a rumor of a quiz. But without the German delegation there, of course, there's a chance for somebody else to win, which is going to be okay.
I have to add, in all those years, and I think you know that I have been, I think I started with the third or fourth AMSAT-UK meeting. I have been at most of them. Yeah. I really miss that.
Okay.
I hope to come back next year, and I will never forget the junk sales and the gateway meetings.
Yeah, the SATgate meetings, they were something else. Okay, 73s, and thank you again.
Thank you, bye-bye, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Peter actually finished pretty well exactly as we predicted at 50 years in 50 minutes, so thank you for that. And it's now lunchtime till 12:30 when we should reassemble. Sorry, at 12:30. Sorry, at 13:45 we should reassemble. I'm stumbling over the schedule here. So please be back at 1:45.